It's the year 2021 and field day is going back to the field. Unfortunately, so are the safety issues. So today we'll talk about safety and how you can stay safe on field day. Coming up. Hey everyone, I am Ria. My call sign is N2RJ. I'm an amateur radio operator and we talk about amateur radio and other related things on this channel. Today we are going to talk about field day. But if you're watching this video and you find the content interesting, you find my other videos interesting, why don't you give us a like? Why don't you subscribe? Because this way you'll get more interesting videos as I release them, especially if you hit that notification bell. All right, with that, let's get on to it. So this year, field day is back with a bang. And by that, I mean a lot of the restrictions have ended. A lot of people feel more confident about gathering, about going outdoors. So I think a lot of clubs are returning to in-person field day, which is the way it was really meant to be. But with that comes some hazards. I mean, there have been a lot of things in field day that have been kind of ignored, I would say, by a lot of people, but also you'll find that people think that, well, they didn't even know that this was a thing on field day in terms of safety. The ARRL has produced a wonderful checklist of field day safety as part of their field day supplement pullout, which has been produced by the ARRL and sponsored by a prominent ham store. And I think they really did a really good job, but there are a few things I would like to add to it. But first, let me go through their list. And I'll also talk about some of the things I found on Twitter. So, I've given like a few things on Twitter where I kind of like threw out the question, how do you operate field day safely? And what's your biggest challenge? And, I came back with a lot of good responses and we could see exactly what people thought. But first, let's go through the ARRL checklist. So if you don't have a copy of this, I will be linking it below. I'm not sure if you have to be an ARRL member to download it, but it's there in the comments, not in the comments, in the video description. So field day safety, right? They tell you that field day is supposed to be fun and you can help keep it that way if you're planning a safety conscious operation. By the way, you do get a bonus for having a safety officer on field day. And don't even just think about it as a bonus points. Think of it as, this person has an important function. You want to ensure that your operation is safe, and the field day safety officer's position as such ensures that. So the first thing is lightning safety. We all know lightning loves antennas. Lightning loves metal. Lightning loves pointy things up in the air. So you want to definitely stay away from lightning. If you hear thunder, lightning is close enough to strike you. And that is true. Even though the thunder is basically after the lightning because sound travels slower than light, it's still close enough to strike you. There is no place outdoors that is safe. So this means that you must go inside. When you hear thunder, go indoors to a building that has electricity. It has water and, an enclosed metal top vehicle is another good place. So for example, like a regular car, that leads me to doubt though, if in a lightning storm, whether I'd be safe in my Tesla because the roof is glass. You put the windows up, right? Because you don't obviously want to get wet. And you stay for at least 30 minutes until after you hear the last sound of thunder. You stay away from objects that conduct electricity, such as antennas, power lines, etc. And then you power off those radios and generators. So the last one is very important because, one, you don't want to get your equipment damaged. And, two, if those things are on, it'll probably encourage people to go and operate them. Turn them off. It's not important. Turn them off, stow away the generator in shelter, and then, disconnect your antennas and then go inside. And then when the storm passes, come back out. So the next thing you want to be aware of is antenna safety. Don't ever climb antenna support structures using temporary guys. I know it might be tempting, and some people might say, well, I know what I'm doing. In reality, though, I've known many amateurs who knew what they were doing, and I knew some who got injured. Some of them got killed. So it's best to know that you'll be safe by not doing it. And this really, it's kind of, it leads me to another thing. Always try to get your antennas as far away from your site as possible. So what does this mean? You don't want to have your antennas like right over your tent, right over your operating position, because temporary antennas can fall. The only exception would be like antennas designed to be mounted that way, such as antennas on top of a pneumatic mast in a vehicle. I know some of these clubs, like for example, WECA, Westchester Emergency Communications Association, has a pneumatic mast on their vehicle, and they have vehicles that are maintained by the town and the city, and then they have pneumatic masts on them, and those are designed to be there. But your temporary tower that you put with temporary guy ropes and such, really, no, you don't want to be below them. Cranes, lifts, and other stuff, keep them away from your tents. Especially don't keep them over your tent. Okay? Erect your antennas far enough away from the tents so that there's no possibility of the structure falling on the operators inside of the tent. Make sure you regularly inspect. That's what your safety officer is for. Okay? Your safety officer should be inspecting everything regularly, particularly during the night, right? Or particularly, not really like, overnight, like before you close up for the night or before you start in the morning. Make sure your safety officer goes through everything. Regularly inspect your guy ropes and the stakes. Make sure that they're still in the ground. I know some of these have like screw terminals you screw in. Well, not screw terminals, but screw anchors you screw into the ground. Make sure those have not worked their way out. Make sure the ropes are not frayed. And, make sure they're still in good condition. Generator safety. This is a big one. Carbon monoxide kills so many people per year. And it's really no joke, because when you burn fuel, such as gasoline or diesel, you produce two main components of exhaust fumes. You produce carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide isn't so much harmful to us. I mean, if you inhale a large quantity of it, yeah, you're probably not going to like it. It's probably going to negatively affect you. But if you inhale carbon monoxide, that's CO, then you'll find that what's going to happen is that eventually it will starve your body of oxygen, because that carbon monoxide combines with the oxygen and hemoglobin in your blood to produce something called carboxyhemoglobin, which your body really cannot process. And as such, your body gets starved for oxygen, you turn blue, and then eventually you suffer the consequences, which can be death. You really don't want to do that. The good news is that carbon monoxide detectors are pretty cheap. You can buy one in the regular hardware store. You can buy one in the, like the big box stores. You can buy one from your local stores. Support your local stores. And the nice thing is a lot of generators now are coming with carbon monoxide alarms. They're coming with carbon monoxide shutoffs. So if it detects a lot of carbon monoxide, you are able to now it'll shut the generator off so that it does not kill you. Unfortunately, they've had to do this because every hurricane season or every time there's a power outage, there are two really dumb things that people do. Number one is some people run a double male plug, right, called a suicide cord, and it's called that for a good reason, to plug the generator into their house. That is another whole topic. By the way, for field day, don't run suicide cords. The other thing people do is that they figure, well, I could put my generator in a sheltered area such as a garage or right next to my house. And then what will happen is that you start up that generator, it'll probably run for a little while, and then it'll fill your house with enough carbon monoxide to kill you, because American homes in particular are very well insulated, a lot of them, there's not a lot of air going in and out, and then you'll find that you're poisoned by carbon monoxide in no time. This is why it's required that homes now have carbon monoxide detectors in them, in addition to smoke detectors. So make sure you have one in your operating area if you're in an enclosed operating area such as a tent. And just keep the generator far away. Don't, keep it at least 10 feet away from your tent, if not more. And the other thing is that, if you can avoid using a generator at all, if you want to use batteries and use the battery and get the battery bonus, that's a very valid thing too. I've been, keenly interested in a company called EcoFlow that has these generators, quote unquote, solar generators that run off of lithium-ion batteries, and they get solar. So I'll be doing some videos on their products on my channel very soon. I actually did one. If you check out the video about the chili sauce, I use an EcoFlow Delta to make the chili sauce using an induction cooker. It was very cool. I was able to do it using solar power, didn't use any grid power at all, and it was very nice. Fueling your generator, and this goes especially for gasoline. Don't ever fuel a running generator. And by running means that the generator is started. Okay? Don't do it, because for one, a lot of generators have exposed rotating hot parts. And then when you add fuel to that, some of it eventually spills. Inevitably, you'll have spilled fuel, spilled gasoline on your generator. And then when that spilled gasoline reaches somewhere hot, probably a spark, it could catch fire. Or worse, it could catch fire and then it could blow up in your face and cause really bad injuries or even death. So just don't do it. Always stop the generator and then wait for the generator to cool about 5-10 minutes, and then refuel your generator and then start it back up. This way you don't have gasoline in a red hot generator that is going to cause a fire. Of course, what I used to do in some of these field day situations was when we refuel the generator, I would have a battery backup in between my radio, like just a regular lead acid battery between my radio and the power supply. So for the little bit of interruption, I still have power. I could still keep going. And that was great. Some of these guys on the field day site, they were like, hey, we can't operate the radio because the generator's off. What you doing? And then some of these guys would be like, yeah, we got to shut off the generator. But then I'd be like, well, I keep running because I have a battery, and then eventually some of them began to bring batteries and attach them to their station. Even like a cheap little 7 amp hour lead acid battery will do the trick for that. And it's good preparation for emergencies. Always store your fuel in an approved container. You've seen, the memes when we had this whole colonial pipeline thing. I mean, this was really epic. I mean, I saw it before that, by the way. During Hurricane Sandy, there was a guy who went to a gas station in upstate New York, and he began to fill gasoline in one of these orange buckets you get from the home improvement store. I don't know what to say about that. So always store it in an approved container. An approved container is metal or plastic, and it's red in color. Okay? And then, some people might modify the valve. I don't really recommend modifying the gas can valve, but if you do that, make sure you pour it safely and make sure you try not to spill any gasoline. I don't advocate modifying the gas cans at all, but yeah, I know some people do them. But don't spill the gas, okay? And always approve containers. In New Jersey, we have full serve gasoline, so it's somewhat less likely that a gas station attendant will allow you to fill up such a container, but people still do it. The other thing is, don't keep your gas cans near the open flame. This means don't keep them in your cooking areas. If you're operating from home, don't keep your gas cans in your basement next to your water heater. I can't believe people do that. My water heater actually has a warning label that says not to do that. Why would people do that? The vapors get out. They come and they would go into this place where you have an open flame burning, and then kaboom, in this open space. You don't want to do that. And centrally locate the generator to keep all branches to stations equal. This one I think is more along the line of you don't want to have too many extension cords going to the generator. You want to also make sure that you don't have as much resistance and people are not tempted to use overly long extension cords, which are fire hazards. Make sure you ground your generator and ground your station and keep those grounds bonded. Now, if you're using extension cords or power cords, whatever, with ground, you should be good. If you can use additional grounding, that's fine. I mean, for temporary setup, it's always good to ground your generator. And this way, if you have an accident, if you have like one of the power leads is touching a metal case, it'll shut off the breaker on a generator. So the other thing about generators is if you have a generator, and this even goes for the solar generators too, make sure that if the generator trips, that if the circuit breaker on the generator trips, that before you reset the circuit breaker, investigate the fault first. Make sure it's not something's not shorting. Make sure you know what caused the fault. Because if you just reset the breaker, it'll probably happen again, or it might not happen again, and you could probably end up sparking or possibly burning something down or shocking somebody if it's the case of a GFI breaker. That's the other thing. A lot of these generators come with GFI, ground fault interrupter breakers, which basically prevent you from being the path to ground. And what you should do is before you run your generator, press the test button and make sure the GFI is working, especially if you're near water. And the other thing is electricity and water don't mix, or they do mix, but you can become part of the conductor if you are in the circuit. So please keep your extension cords and your generator away from puddles of standing water, away from faucets and other sources of water. The other thing that ties into this, and we're going into physical safety, avoid tripping hazards. Use fluorescent safety tape. Like this little orange or green tape, and you mark your guy wires, you mark your coax cables and such so that people can see them, especially at night. Make sure you mark your stakes and make sure you mark the guy wires and cables. Any areas, especially near your antennas, especially near your generators, fence them off. I don't mean put up a big wall. Caution tape, okay? And it doesn't have to be the professional crime scene tape you see in the movies. Put up some orange tape or something and put up a sign that says caution, keep out, right? You don't want people going near your antennas, especially, and you should watch this video too, where today we're talking about RF safety, RF exposure. You don't want people too close to your antennas so that they're exposed to radio frequency energy. So keep that in mind. Visitors to your field day site are always welcome. I always welcome visitors to my field day site. And what I tell them is enjoy your stay, but I'll show you around because I want you to be safe. Especially visitors with children. You want to make sure that they're not touching things, they're not pulling things that they shouldn't. Especially your antennas, which they shouldn't be there anyway. Your generators, your tent stakes, your guy wires, your cooking apparatus. You don't want strangers. So escort them around, show them around. Maybe it'll be a good time to, sell them amateur radio. Tell them this is what amateur radio is all about, but never leave them alone. Unless, of course, you're escorting them back out. But this can be a little difficult in parks, but if you have permits from the park, you usually will be given some ability to, escort people around your site. And the other thing that I want to mention is, especially with children, don't ever leave children unsupervised. Especially around antennas and generators. Children get curious and accidents happen, Medical safety, avoid overexposure to sun. Make sure you wear sunscreen. Make sure you stay out of the sun. I was at a ham fest the other day at the Fair Lawn Amateur Radio Club, which is one of my clubs. You should check out their channel, by the way, fairlawnarc.org. They have a lot of good videos, and I'll link it below so you can see it. If you're going to a ham fest, you'll notice a lot of people are outside and a lot of people are in the open hot sun. Well, I decided to bring a pop-up shelter because I thought that it was not a good idea to stay in the hot sun. And I'll tell you, it was popular because, I wasn't burning, right? I mean, even though, people might think that my skin complexion gives me more shielding against the sun, I can still get skin cancer. I can still get sunburn, So I should still protect myself. I still wear sunscreen. I still end up, out staying in the shade. And I don't want to be exposed to heat exposure too much. Even though I can tolerate a little more of the heat because I grew up in a tropical country, I want to make sure that I'm able to withstand the heat. Stay hydrated. You always want to have enough water. Water is the spice of life. Water makes up everything that we have. Make sure you have water. Easy just to toss these bottled water in a cooler or a portable fridge. I keep a portable fridge that I usually run from solar panels. Know the signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. I'm going to put a link to the CDC there. But, there are several signs you need to look for that you need to basically identify if somebody has heat exhaustion or heat stroke, they need medical attention. And keep a first aid kit on hand. I have links, I'll put links to several first aid kits in the description you can get. And with that, I will say know how to use your first aid kit, know how to do CPR. If you have an AED, if you have access to an AED, know how to use it. I've been trained and certified for a long time now. And, it's always something that I make sure that I know how to do because it could save a life, literally. The other thing that was not mentioned in this list, make sure that you have a phone that can dial 911. I know Amateur Radio's Field Day has a huge aspect of being able to communicate in emergencies. At the same time, though, there is often no substitute for dialing 911. Now, if you are out in the field and you're away from a place where you can call 911, make sure that you're able to either reach a local repeater where you can raise somebody, or frequencies on HF. I know some of these HF nets. There's like the wild ISSB. I don't know if they'll be active on Field Day, but I know they're there to pass emergency traffic. But any other station, Field Day station, should be able to pass emergency traffic. And if you really need to get an ambulance dispatched or to call emergency medical services, it's always good to know at least some of your go-tos. And you don't need a fancy cell phone. You don't need this iPhone. You can use any old phone that's fully charged. It doesn't matter if it has a SIM card. It doesn't matter if it's disconnected. You dial 911 on any cell phone that works with a modern wireless carrier. And then what's going to happen is that you will be able to reach 911. It will simply look for the nearest wireless signal and it will reach you to safety. So always do that. So with that, let's get on to Twitter. So I asked a question on Twitter. What is the most challenging aspect of operating Field Day safely? I had quite a few responses. Chuck Millam, N9KY, writes, operators not realizing they're out of shape and trying to muscle things into place, ignoring signs of heat, distress, injury, etc. And, I could make a long whole video about this, but, there are a lot of people who think that, well, they're invincible, that they think that, I can do anything. And, it's kind of like there's this whole kind of like attitude that, well, it's not going to happen to me. Which incidentally, if you're in the aviation world, that's one of the attitudes that they try to tell you not to have, one of invulnerability. So, yeah, you have to know your own limits. And you really do have to operate within those limits. And, things like, for example, one of the things I would say is, know your own strength. 1, 2, don't be afraid to ask for help. 3, don't do things like climbing towers and, other safety critical things if you had a little too much to drink. It needs to be said, or you're otherwise impaired, if you know what I mean. So just don't do it. If you have not had enough sleep, it's always a good idea to get enough sleep. And always have somebody there to help you. And you like I said, you always want to know the signs of heat stress. Brennan Price, N4QX, he wrote awareness of surroundings of the station setup, particularly during the wee hours of the morning. Bad things happen at night. And it's all too easy to trip on a cable. That's why your cables need to be marked, labeled, and people need to know where they are. Phil Karn, K9Q, he wrote gopher holes, which falls along the same line. We have a problem with gophers here in Sussex, and it's been terrible. These gophers, they dig all over the place. So you really want to be careful. A good idea to have one of these headlights that you put on your head that, you don't have to worry about getting a flashlight when you're moving around at night. And this way you can see all of the hazards. Rattlesnakes, Mark K6WK, and aliens. Well, maybe in California or wherever he is. But you want to, or Nevada probably. You want to make sure that you're safe against natural dangers. Here in New Jersey, we have a few of them. We don't have that many venomous snakes here, but we do have black bears. And we have other things like wasps. Like they come and they'll sting you. It won't kill you, but they'll sting you and it'll hurt. And some people are allergic to them, and bees and such. Rex Rutherford writes, weather lightning is almost a factor in June in Missouri. Yes, and he's missed entire field days due to weather. Okay. Yeah, like I said, lightning safety, tornado safety if you live in tornado country, or anywhere for that matter, because a lot of places experience tornadoes. We had tornadoes here, and we have them. Richard Corfield, thunderstorms. A lot of people select weather. And the year the Bill Aceto, W1PA, weather, the year all the easy ups got blown into the trees. Yeah. Bob McGuire, N4HY, writes injury prevention. Yep. And getting sick from crappy food badly prepared. That's another thing. We tend to cook a lot on field day, right? We have, a lot of people bring barbecue grills. I saw one guy, I'll probably show a picture of this, but one guy brought a whole stove from home. Like, not just like a camp stove. He brought like a whole big thing with a hob and an oven to his field day site. And I was like, what? Really? If you're cooking on field day, make sure your food is good. Make sure you don't suffer food poisoning. I normally carry a portable fridge with me in a lot of places. So I'm ensure that anything I buy from the grocery is always cold and ready to go. Make sure your cold food is kept below a certain temperature and your hot food is kept above a certain temperature. This way you avoid bacteria and other pathogens growing on them. Andy Holmes, K5PO, writes, especially for lots of areas in the southern western U.S., high risk of spending more time in oppressive heat and humidity than they've used to. Risk of heat stroke and exhaustion. We did cover that. I will say you have to absolutely understand your risk to heat exposure. I am from the Caribbean. I've been in the heat since I was little, and I still don't like exposure to heat and ultraviolet because I sunburn too, one. And not only that, I could suffer heat stroke and exhaustion. Kyle A0Z writes, you could check out his channel, by the way. Every year he's on heart attack watch. Bob thinks he's 25 years old again and can climb that tree, get the dipole higher. Corey McKay actually wrote a good point. We laugh, but it brings up a rather serious point. Does your club's field day event have a designated safety officer and on-call medical response? So yeah, you know, it's always good to not only be able to call 911, but if you have an on-call medical resource, you know, like somebody who is EMS, volunteer EMS or professional EMS, or you know, you're doing at an EOC or something like that, and you have the ability to call to get help. One year I was doing field day with a club, and they had a guy who's a professional EMT, and he was there to make sure everybody's safe. So, you know, he's a ham too, but we doubled up. You know, some people, obviously there are a lot of medical doctors in amateur radio. They're a good resource to have around too. You know, they're especially a good resource to have. Man N0SSC writes, probably expecting field day club leaders to care enough, do anything about regarding pandemic safety, dealing with the crazy who goes full ham on incessantly enforcing 6-foot mask, obsessively sanitizing everything, raging when people don't obey, eventually leading to club mitosis. I will say this, okay? If you know, and I'm not saying that you should be forced to do anything. Take all your precautions, right? Things are different now. You know, we're not in the old days of where we realize that we can just wing it and not get sick. There are real threats now. And I've been vaccinated. You know, I know some people don't want to, and even though I tell people they should, you know what, some people are not going to. If you know anybody that has like the symptoms or anything, see anybody that has the symptoms like that, maybe they could get checked out, you know. Any sort of symptoms, really. It doesn't even have to be for that particular virus. You know, if somebody just doesn't look right, you really want to have professional, you know, look at them. Especially with a communicable disease, you want to take precautions to not have it spread. And this is just common sense, you know. This is not being offensive toward anybody. Jeremy Allen, N1 Triple Z, fueling the generators. Like I mentioned, you shut them off, you fuel them. And Phil Carn says, one of these years I'd like to do a field day completely without generators. You know what? I will too. And I'll show you exactly how in a future video. Adam Kimberly, climbing safely on Class 3 terrain and avoiding altitude sickness of 13,240 feet on the Sierra Coast. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's very specific to him. Surviving questionable meat goes along with food safety. And let's see here. Guy wires from portable towers. Yep. Preventing damage to one's trumpet. I don't want to go there. Other hams. Not respecting masts and ropes when erecting antennas. That's good too. That goes around, you know, site awareness and such like that. So that pretty much sums up the Twitter. You know, the thread is still there if you want to comment. It's on there. My Twitter is there. All right, well, that's all we got for now. I hope you enjoy Field Day safely. I'll try to do one more video on another topic for Field Day before the actual Field Day. I think that should be good. Until then, 73, keep on hamming. This is N2RJ. See you.